I'll give you an example of a story that I think is extremely therapeutic. Extremely. And stories can be very tough as well, you know. But you see, when you tell a story, you're not talking to the person. And by talking about somebody else, you see, what happens with the unconscious mind, if I understand it rightly, and this is a nice metaphor to keep in your mind, no matter who you're talking about yourself. No matter who you're listening about, you refer to you. And this is why when people have the ego that's out of control, you can say something about somebody else and they kind of think, they say, what are you saying about me? Okay? It's like it becomes very personal. That's because the mind always is taking in information and it's reflecting on its own self. So I've told this story a few times, and it's very particular to this kind of situation. Let me tell you. So the student said to the master, I've had a bad experience with that person, and therefore I don't trust people like that. And the master said, you remind me of the cat that crept into a house to get warm in the winter, and it sat on the stove and burnt its bottom, and it never sat down again. Okay? That's the story. That is an extremely powerful story. What is the story? Well, it's saying, you know, don't think just because that happened to you once, it's going to happen to you every time. Don't think that that person is the same as everybody else, or don't think that everybody else is the same as that person. Yeah? So that's kind of the idea, you know, the cat never sat down because it thought the act of sitting was the dangerous thing, when in fact it was the actual act of sitting on a stove. So these stories, when you tell people them, quite often you don't need to explain them afterwards. Sometimes when you explain them, it takes away the power, but not always, just depends. If the person looks at you going, I don't even know what that means, then you might need to explain it. But often people understand these stories, you know, very quickly. I'll tell you another one that I heard, and I'd heard this story before because Paul McKenna uses it in some of his work. And I heard it when I was working for a multi-level marketing company, and I knew that it was the wrong thing to do. I knew that this company was not doing the right thing. I knew that I was lying to people about what potentially they could earn. It was a lie I was living. And I knew that I was working something like 80 hours a week. So I knew there was something seriously wrong with the picture. And we went to a conference, and the guy who was doing this like energy talk, you know, like motivational speaker, he told the story of the fisherman who was lying one afternoon against his boat smoking his pipe, and the businessman came by and said to him, what are you doing? And the fisherman said, I'm just lying here relaxing. He goes, why aren't you out fishing? And the fisherman said, because I've caught enough fish for today. And the businessman said, yeah, but you're not thinking straight. If you go out and you fish again and get extra fish, then it's going to be better. And the fisherman said, well, what would I do with the extra fish? The businessman rolled his eyes and he said, you would sell them and you would get extra money. And he said, well, what would I do with the extra money? He said, well, what you would do is you would buy another boat and you would get somebody to work the other boat. So you would get double the catch, and then you would work all the afternoons, and very soon you would have a whole float of boats. You'd have a whole business. And the guy said, what would I get from that? He said, you would get a lot more money. And the fisherman said, and what would I do with all that money? He said, well, you would have so much money that you could pay everybody else to fish, and you wouldn't need to. And the fisherman said, so what would I do? He said, well, you could just relax and do whatever you like. The fisherman looked at him with a wry smile. He said, and what precisely do you think I'm doing right now? Okay, so he told that story, very powerful story, which is all about, you know, trying to get things, to have something that you already have. It's a God-given gift to be able to relax and just enjoy yourself. And he told that story to a group of multi-level marketing people. For me, that was the turning point where I said, right, I'm going to get out of this because this is not what I want to do. No amount of money is going to bring me happiness. And so these are very powerful stories. Obviously, you've got to choose the right one for the circumstances. He chose the completely wrong one for the circumstances. However, it was the right one for me. So stories are wonderful. Get a bank of stories. After a while, you don't know who you've told the stories to. Sometimes you repeat yourself. I know I do. But it doesn't matter, because some people are quite happy to hear the story twice. In fact, what happens is after a while, they become almost like mantras, the story of. And this is why we have things like a stitch in time. We just have to say that to people. A stitch in time. Yeah. Here in Spain, they've got a beautiful one, which is in the house of the ironmonger, wooden spoons. That's a lovely, I love that. That is a story. Because what does it mean? That the people who are most capable of putting something right, often in their own lives, don't do it. Look at therapists. Look at therapists' lives. Yeah. They're not always completely sorted in their life. So, get some good stories. The more stories you have for more different things, the better. And if you've got a good imagination, invent the stories. Invent them. I've invented them before. Think, I haven't got a story for this. I'll invent one. Okay? That's what hypnosis is all about. Inventing stories, inventing metaphors inside. Okay? So, get your stories, get a good bank of them and use them, because they will change you and they will change your clients forever. I love you all. I'll see you all later. Bye-bye.